Hello, welcome back to Marathon Man, where I go through Doctor Who from the very beginning, and you join me at a story which consensus can't decide is a meta masterpiece or a steaming pile of dog shit. Received wisdom is an odd beast. It can sometimes take you under its wing and give you the best advice imaginable, bestowing upon you such sage nuggets that you feel glad you listened to it. And then other times, particularly when it comes to Doctor Who, it can lead you a very merry dance. The Space Museum is a story about which received wisdom can give you no clue. Its original reputation was very much unfavourable, but has started to enjoy something of an upswing. Brought about largely, probably, by one of its loudest champions, Rob Shearman, contributing the Defending the Museum talking head to the DVD release. Shearman's musings on the story have caused some people to reevaluate it somewhat, and I think that's a good thing. And while I don't think it's entirely deserving of its paltry former reputation, strangely I don't find myself agreeing with Shearman completely either. Shearman's defence is that it's a comedy poking fun at various tropes, and the gag is that it's meant to be boring, rather than being boring by simply not being very good. And I agree that it's certainly meant to be a funny one. That much is obvious from the script. I mean, take Barbara's line.
Well, you might ask. I mean, that's a good cardigan.
It's clearly intended to raise a laugh, it's funny in and of itself, and it's a lovely reference to Barbara's preferred apparel. It's Doctor Who commenting on itself. And if I take that line to be a metafictional reference, and I very much do, then I must also take lines such as,
Actually, all the doors and corridors are exactly alike.
being yet more examples of the show referring to itself. As I must do with the subversion of a few other cliches rather than yawning at them for being ludicrous, such as the sneeze when taking refuge and hoping not to be discovered, or the poor peripheral vision of a lot of the show's supporting characters. Even the cliffhanger to the first episode is a subversion of a well-worn trope. Instead of they've arrived, it becomes we've arrived. Basically, the script is too good for it not to all be one big joke. The final episode, the final phase, is that another meta reference, contains some great exchanges between Ian and Lobos.
What have you done to him?
I don't think you would appreciate the technical difficulties.
I absolutely buy into the whole thing being a put-up job. Like, how many times have we seen it before where a writer kind of fumbles science fiction gobbledygook or hand waves something away like that? I can't watch this story without thinking all of this is intentional. Yet, even though I think Shearman is probably right and it is all one big joke, I don't think that fully redeems the Space Museum. It's got several other problems. One of them is very similar to a problem the Web Planet had, and that is endearing and relatable supporting characters. So in my video about the Web Planet, I said I found it very hard to relate to the Zarbi, the Optera and the Menoptera. And the same is true here of the Morlocks and the Zerons. Now I do think that that is part of the joke. It seems to be riffing on the uniformity of alien races and factions within science fiction's depictions of interspecies wars. But if the Zerons and the Morlocks being simply drawn is part of the joke, and it must be right down to the decision to dress one side in black and one side in white, then that is quite a long joke to sustain once you've made it. I appreciate the joke, but it doesn't mean I don't get tired of it. It also means that when characters are killed, I don't much care. How can I be invested in them if they've been written and treated like a joke? For me though, the idea of it being a simple joke but stretched over 4 episodes and therefore stretched too thinly, that's the only drawback I've got with this, because there are some good things to enjoy along the way. As already touched upon, the script is very good and offers up more than your average share of great lines. There's one almost right off the bat when our crew become unfrozen in the regular clothes rather than the 13th century garb they had on last week. And Ian remarks,
Doctor, we've got our clothes on.
Well, I should hope so, dear boy, I should hope so.
while it presents a very good mystery and a delightfully unique problem to be reckoned with, it doesn't skimp on fun either. Hartnell is allowed to be excellently doddery and eccentric, more so than he has been in the past. Muttering to himself about Ian's lost button, wittering on about steam from a kettle, pretending to have fainted when captured, before emerging from having hidden inside a Dalek. This is the Doctor having fun, and it's infectious. Incidentally, when the Doctor's hiding inside the Dalek and amuses himself by saying, "I am the Master," I've always taken that to be him pretending to be his old friend, taking the mickey out of his old nemesis because for always banging on about being a master of disguise. That's just my own interpretation that I amuse myself with, but especially as the Master hadn't been created by this point. But it kind of works. The fun continues with the Doctor's interrogation by Lobos, having fun with the machine and conjuring up images of penny farthings and walruses and himself in a bathing suit. All gives us the best glimpse yet at the mischievous manipulator. And even though the show is now nearly 2 years in, Hartnell is still adding to the character of the Doctor, and is quite frankly firing on all cylinders. His best scene though comes when he's thawed in the final phase. Railing against Lobos and his lack of conscience is absolutely brilliant, and it helps to flesh out the Doctor even more when in any other show at this point, almost 2 years in, we'd have a handle on who the lead was completely. But the fact that we're still seeing new elements of the Doctor only adds to the mystery about him. When mulling over revenge on Lobos, he states,
My conscience won't allow me to do that. It's a pity, isn't it? It's a pity.
witty, eccentric, prone to righteous anger, and good to his core, yet still a mystery. Maureen O'Brien continues to really impress as Vicky as well. Having noticed her subtly different relationship with the Doctor from that of Susan's, here I also notice her slightly different rapport with Ian and Barbara. She seems to actually talk to them as equals, most noticeably when discussing the TARDIS being brought into the museum and whether or not they should try to stop it from reaching its future destination inside. She's also quick to offer up a theory towards the end of the Space Museum, the episode, not the story, involving the dimensions within time. As much as Susan would have been capable of forming the same theory, given her origins, it's hard to imagine her actually doing so given how she was written and treated in the show. Vicky is proving herself to be a more forceful and therefore stronger character than her predecessor. Vicky is the one who actually breaks into the armory and kickstarts the revolution after working out how to get around the computer. And that it comes after her pointing out how useless the Zerons are as rebels. This really reinforces her position in the show. She is an asset to the TARDIS crew. And this scene also has another one of the script's fantastic lines.
That is where we are strong, in our planning.
And the story is more successful with its little jokes along the way than it being one big joke. I do appreciate the reminder that it is all one big joke, but by having the littler jokes break it up, it makes it a little bit more palatable, but it doesn't stop the fact that that one big long joke does get tiresome. And this story does something else new as well, because so far Doctor Who has fully embraced its unique set of parameters. It can go anywhere in time and space, and it does so. Each story is in a different setting that's wildly different from the last, but this story is the first time to fully explore time and the dangers of travelling through it. It's really interesting and satisfying to watch the crew fighting their own future. Obviously, this is more pronounced in the first episode, but it hangs over the subsequent 3 as well, so much so that it does become one of the Space Museum's defining characteristics. Reaching the end of this story, I find myself once again at odds with received wisdom, except this time torn between two camps of it. I appreciate what the Space Museum is trying to do and fully applaud it for doing so, but I just can't quite say that I think it's entirely successful at pulling it off. The idea of an invading force who are now bored of the planet that they've successfully invaded and an indigenous rebellion so useless at fighting back, I think there's a lot of scope in that. And I even like how some of it is depicted here. I mean, the Doctor sums it up perfectly when he says,
My dear Lobos, I don't think your soldiers have really got their heart in their job, have they?
It's a wonderful notion and it starts off well, but like I said, I think it's too long a time to sustain a joke. Certainly in the way that this joke is told. I mean, it's not like the script doesn't have other jokes, because it's got plenty. So I feel like this story probably would have been more successful at what it was aiming to do if it treated the situation as a joke rather than its characters. Had it done that, I think it would have coalesced a lot better, and the characters, had they not been as one-dimensional, would have been easier to invest in. If you've invested in the characters, then you stand a better chance of finding the whole joke, the whole overarching joke that the story is making. You stood a better chance of finding that funny. After 71 episodes, I am still resolutely not bored of the Doctor and Company's escapades, and I'm still fully on board with this marathon, and I do find much to enjoy in the Space Museum. So I can't agree with all of those who write it off as mind-numbingly dull, but I also find myself not fully being able to agree with Robert Shearman that it's a postmodern classic either. I can and do subscribe to the notion that it's a perfectly valid experiment that unfortunately doesn't quite come off. Ian defrosting the Doctor and confronting Lobos. The poorly drawn characters. I got the joke and even found it funny for a time, but it got old quickly. It is therefore a middle of the road 3. I'm not writing it off as it has been historically, because Robert Shearman is right. It's all one big joke. So it all rests on the fact of whether or not you find that joke funny. As ever, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this trip to the museum, then please exit through the gift shop and give it a like. I'd be super grateful. And what do you think about this story? Do you think it's a metatextual masterpiece or a massively mundane misstep? And is the exploration of time as a dimension an exciting new facet to the show? Or do the Morlocks kill off any goodwill you might have towards the story? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you back here soon for something of a paradox, a jovial 6-episode wacky race and heart-wrenching goodbye to some beloved companions. So if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and fire up the time-space visualizer for some fun with the Daleks. See you soon.